Okay, welcome everyone. Sorry, we're about 3 minutes over our 3 o'clock. It's great to have you all with us today. If the past 100 days have been tough, I think the last week in particular has been the toughest of all of us in the tourism industry. So it's really difficult, and I find that for myself, to stay focused and productive and positive, and also manage my stress during these dark times. With us today, we have an expert who's going to guide us on a journey to get there, and I'll introduce her in a minute. But first, feel free to let us know where you are connecting from in the chat below. I see lots of familiar faces, so I'd love to see your names on the chat. Joining us all the way from the US, please no jokes about Donald Trump in the chat. We have executive coach, speaker, and organizational consultant, Dr. Bena, who focuses on personal growth and healthy living. She has taught thousands of individuals looking to de-stress, build resilience, and experience spiritual awakening. Dr. Bena enjoys helping clients and organizations grow and transform. She conducts research and writes science-based articles on long-term mindfulness, meditation, and yoga in leadership at work. Dr. Bena also coaches people at some of the most successful companies in the world, including Google, Amazon, Merrill Lynch, and Johnson & Johnson. And it is such a great privilege to have her with us today, all the way from the US. Bena, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. And it was so lovely to have met you a few months ago, all those nights without wine. I really appreciate having you on the call with us today. Before I hand over to Bena, I just want to hand over to Martin from African Travel Week for a quick welcome, and then we will hand over to Bena. Martin?
Thanks, Nat. And I think I need to work on my bio. It's not as impressive as Dr. Long. So from an Africa Travel Week perspective, just a warm welcome to wherever you are in the world. I'm currently freezing in Joburg, but it is nice to see, as Nat said, familiar faces. And it's a wonderful topic that's being discussed today, and I think it's coming at the right time. There's a lot out there that's happening, from chocolate logs being discontinued to a whole bunch of other things that we're all dealing with. So I think we all have our own personal struggles as well as work struggles. So I'm excited and delighted to hear what Dr. Bena Long has to say. And once again, thank you to Big Ambitions, who have helped and support Africa Travel Week in putting this together. So over to you, Nat.
Thanks, Mart. And Ghost Pops, I am so devastated. I want a moment's silence before we begin for the disappearance of Ghost Pops. Anyway, over to Dr. Bena. We are in your very, very capable hands.
Well, thank you, Natalia, Martin, and everyone involved here. I really appreciate. I'm honored, actually, especially during these unprecedented, uncertain, difficult, liberty-losing times, and the challenges that we're all facing. So, there's a phrase saying we can't choose the time that we live, but we can choose what we do with that time. So over the course of this event here, I am sharing with you what we do have control over. So think about the life that you are living right now, under quarantine, with restrictions and more of liberties disappearing. The first thing that almost all of us, whether consciously or subconsciously, is occurring, and for most of us, we're very aware of it at this point, is we've entered survival mode. And survival mode is often something that we don't pay attention to directly as a state that we can actually shift out of. So I'm going to share with you what your brain's doing. We'll explore possibilities and new ways of experiencing where you are right now. So I want you first, though, to invite yourself into an open mind. So mindset, we hear that word a lot. So you can have a mindset that is closed, or you can have a mindset that's open, right? And with everything closing around you, we want to actually remember that what you have control over may not be the liberties being taken away from you. Although I'm hearing protests and so on are going on and people are supporting one another, which is great. But to make any decision without playing whack-a-mole, I'm familiar with whack-a-mole. I love this game, but it's crazy because even while people think they're making great decisions, whether it's the government or even in your own business, when you are functioning from that survival space, you're playing whack-a-mole because you're often not having clarity. You're not seeing beyond the short term. And you want to be able to see both the short and the long term and have the ability to think through things. Now, I know that you know that when you're in a panic state or you're in an extreme emotional state, it's very hard to think and think clearly. We're reactive. We just keep reacting. So I want you to, everybody's got a hand, right? Choose your hand, and I want to invite you that you take your thumb and you put your thumb in the middle of your palm. Literally do this, come on. It's virtual, but we got to get our bodies involved. Your thumb's in the middle, and then you're going to close your fingers over, right? Almost like a fist, make it like a fist. But this is your brain. So this is approximating your brain. So right now, in this moment, it is likely that instead of embracing and using your whole brain here, that part that's the thumb underneath, that stem of the brain is also known as reptilian brain. It is the most basic survival mode functioning. It's the most ancient part of our brain. It's where your emotions really run the show. Emotions are great, but what happens is under this survival space, you're only functioning, you can open the fingers again and look at the thumb there. You're only functioning from that. You've got all this other brain that's not involved. And you'd probably think some of what's going on in your own decisions and those around you're going, yeah, this is what's ruling me. So we want to get the rest of the brain involved, especially the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part where we can actually pay attention to what we're doing and what we're thinking, allowing ourselves the room to think. So we can let our brain disappear for the moment and let that go. So how do we do this? How do we do this? I want you first to we're going to do a baseline assessment, okay? Baseline assessment. We're going to assess 3 different things. We're going to assess your physical body and your experience of that right now. We're going to assess the pace of your thinking or thoughts in your mind, and we're going to assess your emotional state. So how do we do that? So let's first just notice, how fast are your thoughts moving? Are they fast, super fast, slow, nowhere to be found? This is just for yourself, just to notice. And I'm going to invite you to actually close your eyes just for a moment so you can tune in a little bit more to yourself and not to me. I want you to notice, what is the emotion or emotions that are flying in you? And you may not be aware, but I want to bring your attention into that. Is it sad? Is it happy? Is it frustrated? Is it angry? Is it overwhelmed? Is it content? Whatever it may be. With your eyes still closed, now I want you to notice your physical body. What does it feel? Is it relaxed or tense? And if you want, you may even choose to notice just scanning head, neck, shoulders, chest, belly, back, legs, feet. Are there particular places that are holding or tense more than others? And then just gently blink and open your eyes. That's now. Right now, that's where you're at. So your baseline in this moment, and I'm assuming no one is literally physically in the moment under duress, in the sense of under attack, that you're sitting somewhere where you actually are safe and comfortable. I can't always make that assumption, but I want to make that assumption for you right now. And if that is the case, whatever this baseline experience is that you're having, is even if your physical space is safe, what will you choose to do up here is going to either create more the need for self-preservation, the continuing stress and unwinding of challenges, and the continual self-talk that's like a spiraling. Those actually are choices. It doesn't feel that way because remember, the brain, you've engaged just the reptilian brain. So what we want to understand is, how do I have my whole brain involved, my whole body involved? And so as we talk through the session, and we'll do break-off sessions as well, I want to invite you to understand that the neuroscience behind what you're experiencing is important only in that if it shows you that your brain doesn't have to rule what you do, because you're more than just that physical body, and you're more than just your thinking. You have probably in your life a time, a moment, and maybe for some many moments, experiences of awe and inspiration, of deep calm, of immense clarity. You already know states of being that have invited you into this clarity and contentment. But we live with a couple myths. The first myth is, if I'm not in pain and I'm not excessively busy and I'm not working all the time, I'm not good enough, I'm not going to achieve what I need, I'm not going to get and be able to serve my people. The irony is that the more you push and push and push and push the system, the quicker you will burn out. And now with all of these external pressures, the myth that you have to experience discomfort to succeed is a disaster. The truth is that we all need to rest and rejuvenate. Sleep, as an example. If you're not aware, when you sleep, a couple things happen. During deep sleep, your brain literally gets washed free of the toxins and chemicals. If you're not getting enough sleep, you automatically enter what would seem like, and within the research, they talk of it as being equivalent to being drunk, that you're not allowing your physical brain to actually release the toxins, cleanse the system so you can think clearly. And that's just sleep. So we often, and I know within especially tourism, we all want a vacation. We've all had enough, right? We all at the same time want to be able to serve our people, and that is all being stymied right now. So you have to keep coming back to, what do I have control over? And if you keep pushing yourself, you will never allow your system to reboot, to regenerate, so that you can move with your decision making with greater and greater precision and clarity. Before the session, we were talking a bit of what's going on with governments. And, I like to think of people from a place first that's gracious and benevolent. And let's assume that you're not the only one that is freaked out. You are not the only one. And that even those that are in positions of power can be functioning from this fight or flight freeze space, from this need of self-preservation, from fear. So we have to start with erasing that myth of, I have to keep going, I have to keep pushing. You need rest, rejuvenation, and relaxation. Because without those, you will not think clearly. You might become hypervigilant, but if fear is driving that, then it starts diminishing your own health and well-being. If you are not healthy, if you are not functioning from clarity, then decisions often have consequences because you're not seeing a fuller picture. And it's very hard to see a fuller picture when you are in a space of fear and stress. So the first thing we need to do is we really need to understand, how do I relax? All of you individually, from a place of sheer passion, what's in your heart. You're all here because you want to not only help yourselves, but just as I hear from Natalia, right, is that you clearly care about one another. So just as viruses spread, so can the joy, the experience of relaxation, the encouragement to actually take a breath. The irony is while we're all sequestered, I want us to reframe for a moment. We feel, I'm not choosing to do this. It's being forced upon me. But if we reframe that and say, wow, this is the first time I'm actually been able to stay in my space for such an extended period of time. What can I do here? Do you know there are people that choose to do that? They're called monks. They choose to do that. So just like if you think of people in prison, prisoners, and are there because they're being held prisoner, but the guards choose to be there. So we want to play a little bit in our mind with, if I chose to be in this space, I probably wouldn't necessarily for as long as it's been taking, but if I chose, what would that free me up to do? So the first thing here is understanding how to relax. So I want to take you through that. And then the second that we're going to move into is, how do I reframe things? And that's partially what I was talking about. So let's experience the most basic form of relaxation. This will involve recognizing that we take a lot of input through our eyes. So I'm going to invite you, stimulus, to just simply close your eyes. Just close your eyes. If you're taking notes, just stop for a moment, literally sit comfortably in your chair and close your eyes. The first part of closing the eyes, you may recognize that all you have then is all that talk, that voice, the sensations and sounds inside your head. I want to introduce you to your mind. The mind is always moving. It can be your friend. We don't force it to stop because it doesn't. But I want you to recognize, as we close our eyes, I'm going to give you a few words. I want you to watch your own mind. I'm going to say the word, and then I want you to see what your mind does with it. Monkey. The beach. Sunshine. With your eyes still closed, notice the mind even takes a word and it just travels off. It starts thinking about something. It brings about a personal story. This is what mind does. It's a powerful source of creativity. It's a connector. But we have a myth of thinking can solve all our problems. So with your eyes closed, I want to invite you to imagine and feel your forehead. You could even take your hand and just feel your forehead. Just let the hand flow across the forehead. And then let that hand rest. Once you feel the forehead, I don't want you to think about the forehead. I want you to feel it. Now imagine it as smooth as possible. Very gently noticing it smooth. And then allowing your eyes to blink and become open again. So depending where you are and what you're doing, that might have been subtle and very difficult to experience. So I'm going to invite you one more thing. I want you to connect inside yourself. So I'm going to invite you to rub your hands together. What are we doing? I want to engage your ability to relax. See, even your mind keeps wandering. It keeps going all over the place. So your mind either thinks or feels. So as you're rubbing your hands together, feel the temperature between your palms. Feel the temperature. Focus on it. There's nothing else going on. Literally just feeling that temperature. Good. Palms still together. Maybe you feel tingling. Bringing the fingers down that your hands embrace one another. Pause. Then allow yourself to note what that feels like. Then noticing which thumb is in the front and reversing the thumbs and reversing every single finger all the way through. And feeling that. Does that feel as comfortable as the first? The first is your everyday habit, pre-COVID-19 and lockdown. And everything you're experiencing now is offering the opportunity to do things different. It's not your habit. Everything really in your life at this point is a little bit at disease or discomfort. That's where we're at. If you allow yourself, you can release that, to first think of relaxation. How do you enable yourself? You have to give yourself permission to pause. Cannot be underestimated or understated. We want to think clearly. You can't if you're stuck here. How do we disengage and engage the whole brain? You have to relax your system. You need to get enough rest. It's antithetical to everything we're taught. I was a competitive gymnast in my early days, as high as I could within the collegiate world. And I lived by the motto, I will sleep when I'm dead. And I burnt out. Yes, I achieved a lot. And then I watch executives that I worked with push and push and push and push. And then they get a little bit of break, maybe like a weekend before all this, and they'd get headaches. They would get sick. And because they never allowed themselves to relax. Our system, our biological system is not meant to run 24/7. So I think we get that idea, right? The second is reframing. So if we want to change our mindset, it's very hard sometimes if you are not engaging your full brain. So that's why I wanted to cover the brain and this relaxation piece first. To reframe things, the second, first of all, the myth of reframing is that whatever you're thinking in the moment is real. Have you ever noticed your mind never lies to you? You always have the right answer. The perspective you got is the right one. Our minds are tricky. We just have perspective. And what's great about reframing is you can take any situation. Let's take something benign. Many years ago, I was working with a partner, and we had a training system where part of what I'm showing you here is very systematic training. At the time, and this was 20 years ago, we used to call it emotional intelligence training. Now, you may be familiar with emotional intelligence now, but back then it wasn't a thing, and the corporate world had no interest whatsoever. Reframing was recognizing our audience needed this desperately. And the things I'm showing you has been going on, and even from my mentor from the 1970s, working with executives, and myself for the past 25 years. What can we call this? How do we use language? Language is full of meaning. So that this emotional intelligence program was going nowhere. We changed it to strategic intelligence skills. That was it at the time. And the game changed. Was it the same program? Absolutely. It was a name because of what it elicited and how the meaning was made. Your language use is powerful. We often think of positive thinking and negative thinking. I am not going to tell you positive is any better than negative. What? Look, we only need positive thinking because we have negative thinking. They're both available. They're two sides of the same coin. If you are stuck just in negative thinking, it's a message. Either it's just a habit you have and that's where your mind goes. Okay? And I've worked with people that's the first go-to for the mind. And that's okay. So then you think, I don't want to be stuck in the negative, because more often than not, the negative isn't necessarily very pleasant. And it's not pleasant an experience. So then you think, I want to go to the positive. So you can reframe something. So for example, take people that are making decisions right now. We can see them as being vindictive, or we can say, wow, maybe they're just afraid. So I'm moving from the negative to the possibility. Is it true? I don't know. Their behaviors will show us. When you shift to positive, you're not done. That movement is helpful from negative to positive. But ultimately, if you stay just in that thinking process without playing with reframing, you'll keep going back to how you think things, right? So we can look at the doom and gloom of everything that's going on. And it's real. I'm not denying that reality. But we have, and you have, a choice. What world do you want to live in? There is always good and bad. Always. That duality is here. Do you focus on the negative, or are you aware of it? Do you focus on the positive, or are you aware of it? This is where we begin. Reframing then the story you're telling. I want you to think for a moment. What is a story you're telling yourself about your current situation right now? Just one. If I can, one story that a client was telling me was that she couldn't affect change. She was getting really, really frustrated, knowing that the people that she was employing more likely than not would have to be laid off. So when she was in that negative state, a reality, but experiencing it in its negativity, she herself became immobilized. She no longer could become creative. The pain of that is real. It's very difficult. So in helping her, and in ways that I hope what presents here today, you can gather something, is that that may be true, but we want to be able to access our creativity. Maybe it's not just your burden. Maybe collectively. I mean, how many of us are here? There's at least 30 people here. Is it shift from just you? Do you reframe it into discussing with one another? I and my business are having and struggling, and we're having difficulty. Is there any way that we can help one another? You know, I'm hearing things like crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. You know, these things are real possibilities. But if you just stay in yourself, in your own negative state, and don't attempt, can I phrase this a different way that might bring a little bit of light or levity? Can I shift so that there's upliftment? What do I have control of right now? And every single one of us, you included, can choose what you think in your own mind. Doesn't mean you'll feel it at first. That's why we go back to, you have to understand what ways you need to relax. And I know alcohol's not there anymore, or the supply is being diminished. So I want to show you tools that enable you to get the whole brain involved by doing the first step of relaxing, and then invite yourself to reframe. If you language it differently, you will be able to then start to play a little bit, even under the most difficult of situations. The third part, and I want to be mindful of time, so Natalia, you have to let me know. The third part is, there is a space between stimulus and response. Stimulus, what's happening externally, the thoughts you have internally. There's a space. We all have it. So that you can respond rather than react. You can still respond immediately and quickly. And that's different than reacting. That space is what I want to invite you into. So, to access that space, I want to invite you to note, we're going to do a short experiment, and then we'll open up to the questions and things that have been presented before this meeting. Okay. The experiment's going to involve, I want to invite you to close your eyes again for a moment, because I want you to become familiar with your own mind. So if you're taking notes or anything, just make sure you're sitting comfortably. I want to invite you to recognize or remember something that was uplifting and joyful to you before all of this. It was a vacation or being with family. Maybe it was the business doing really well, but a visceral feeling. Where were you? Imagining it inside your mind, what it felt like. What were the sounds? Who was there? What were you talking about? Noticing as you're doing that, maybe just even doing this is difficult, and that's okay. Maybe nothing's coming up, and that's okay. But maybe you remember into the past. And then I want you to, with your eyes closed still, I want you to imagine a future that is uplifting, something, a dream, a joy, maybe even your own vacation, maybe you're thriving. Again, notice, is that really hard to do? You might not be able to go there, and that's okay. And maybe you can go there. If you can, who's with you? What are you doing? Where are you? Notice. And then very gently, blinking and then opening the eyes. How many of you chose to be here with me? Come on, you went to that future space. How many of you said, oh, I want to hang out with Dr. Bena? Probably not. But none of you went anywhere. Your mind creates. It's always going. You don't have to stop it. But where is it going? It can go to the past. And in this case, I invited you to think of things that were joyous and uplifting. And I invited you to think to the future, because that's where the mind goes. It goes to the past and it goes to the future. And it does this all the time. You are traveling all the time. But I want to invite you to recognize how you can start directing that for yourself inside. Because your physical body did not go anywhere. So to be present, to be here right now, to experience the pause between stimulus and response, we have to actually feel, not just be in our heads. Remember the myth, we think thinking solves everything. It doesn't. It's a good use of problem solving, but it's only one level of your intelligence. That space between stimulus and response invites you to access a different level of your intelligence called perception, also known as being. And it's active right now, but it's behind all of that noise. So when it's a stormy, rainy day, thunder, lightning, clouds, rain going on, sound familiar? You know that internal experience. We forget the sun is still shining behind all that. The space between stimulus and response is accessible at any moment, but we have to stop being stuck just in the frenetic, frantic, stress-laden place. The first step is to relax. So there's lots of ways to get to that relaxation space. So I want to open up and let's move from here, fully engaging and questioning from people that are present.
Thanks, Bena. Chelsea, do you want to throw people into a breakaway room, or would you like us all just to be on this room? It's your meeting.
I think we can maybe just stay in the room, all of us.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'll kick it off, Bena, and I'll kick it off with your commentary around respond and react. And I personally am at the coalface of a lot of react, and find it very difficult to set the boundaries, shall we will, and kind of stop the reaction, or the people that are wanting me to react, to make me react really quickly. Because I think we've seen it over the last week. We've all become so desperate for something to happen that the lizard brain kicks in, as you say, and the first thing we want to do is to all go off in different directions and do different things, because what we've been doing hasn't obviously been working. And as I say, we're pretty desperate at this stage. So how does someone like me, for example, who is receiving that kind of urgency, or that please, you need to do something now, how do you, as a business owner or somebody in industry, set a boundary so that you provide enough space to think properly and respond adequately without reacting yourself?
Mm-hmm. Right. So the scenario where you're literally in conversation, there's nowhere to go, right? One of the mechanisms is, and this is why I talk about your body, because your mind's been hijacked. So to set a boundary, what often is helpful is to have a ritual for yourself. This is just one. Everybody's different. So I'm going to talk and present a couple different scenarios. One is, your question says, first of all, what boundary do you need? So the space between stimulus and response. So one of the boundaries that can be created is knowing, first of all, that you need the boundary. Secondly is, how do you engage it? If you're on a conversation with one another, now I haven't had the opportunity to train you. There's other things you can do. You can start rubbing your hands together. You need a mechanism, a key that reminds you boundary. So for example, Thinking, if you try and solve it at thinking, you're trapped. It's very hard to disengage. So this is why I pull the body in. What works for you? Snap fingers, maybe snap your leg, rub the palms together. Some people, and I can take you through, but is you feel the breath. The idea is you need to shift from thinking into your perceiving. If you just stay with your thought, because this is the thing, we're trained. Unless you've been doing yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong or martial arts, this may be very new. If you've already been practicing those things, then you will have mechanisms. Boundary setting. One, say it, write it down. Use your language. I will set boundaries for myself in these situations. When you're on the phone then, so it needs a little bit of preparation or remembering. I need a space, I need a pause, I need a boundary. You're saying that inside yourself. When you're in the conversation with the person, it may be as simple as, I can't answer you in the moment. I will need to call you back. You have to give yourself the opportunity. Or it may be, you also push responsibility, saying, I cannot give you a direct answer, I have to bring it to my team. Anything to create a pause. Then,
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Go ahead. Was there something else?
No, it was just buying time. Actually, that's such a. It sounds ridiculous, but I think again, when you experiencing lizard brain, all you want to do is react really quickly. So you can't think of the fact that you actually need to. You need to buy a little bit of time to figure out what to do, essentially. And I actually love the introduction of a reminder, almost like an elastic band that you can kind of just flick to remind yourself that, you know, you need to breathe and take a second and not react. Sean has said, when you don't have all the answers, what tools do you suggest to keep staff employees motivated? We've had motivational speakers and group webinars, but due to the length of this crisis, how do we help to help them to get through this? And I think as leaders, that's a really good question, Sean. How do you keep people motivated over such a long period of time? It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes, and so I have to make some cultural assumptions here. Because there's different forms of leadership. If we're talking more hierarchical, where there is the assumption that my leader knows everything, this becomes a little bit more challenging. I think some of you are functioning from that space, but I do want to also, there's a spectrum of Gert Hofstede in his study of culture and so on. There's different ways we approach this. If you're in a purely hierarchical position where your team does look upon you as the know-all, be-all, you know, you've got the answers. The challenge with that becomes how you choose to empower them, okay? So everyone has their power, even in a particular position. So the motivation isn't about you giving motivation. It's about you inspiring their own creative power and capacity within their role. How do you do that? First of all, you have to know inside of yourself that you wouldn't have hired them if, let's put it this way, you hired them to do what they need to do because you know they can do it. So we're not talking about their ability to do their job or their work. We're talking about the personal, emotional camaraderie of recognizing that we are all in this difficult time together. And what I'm saying, this challenge for a strictly higher, have to be willing, and I think the times, you either have to be willing to say, I don't know where I'm going, but I know where we want to get to. So from whatever leadership position you're in, it's the vision of your future that you're presenting, not the tactical step by step by step, because every single one of us is stepping into the unknown. It's not new, it's just in our face more. So whatever form of leadership you take, whether it's hierarchical or more peer-based, remember that you are leading a vision, and that it's okay to not know what the next step is, what the right decision is, because you're going to do what you need to do, and the inspiration you provide for your staff is with the vision of what you're moving toward, because we don't know how we're going to get there. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. As you said, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know what next week is going to bring. So, and again, just tapping into the strengths of different people and helping leverage their particular strengths so that they can be the best that they possibly can be. Even if all they want to do is just lie in bed and drink pineapple beer, because now we can't buy alcohol.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think it is, it's the human dignity piece. Let's recognize this, sucks. And so, let's recognize, yes, we're doing that. We don't want to get out of bed. It is depressing. This is really challenging. And so the inspiration, the irony as a leader is, and I know as a teacher, I'll get more from students. I'll learn more from everyone around me if I listen. So there's different ways to do that. What you focus on, so a principle of the mind, whatever you focus on grows. Think about it. Last time you went to buy a car, I don't know. So maybe it was this great Honda car or whatever, and it was a specific color. Did you notice all of a sudden Hondas were everywhere, right? Yeah, because what you focus on grows in the mind. So for your leadership, keep your vision up front and focus. Talk about it. Talk about each person's role in that vision. Hear their stories. And stories sometimes, leave room for the expression of the discomfort, but then elicit what's their story about what they've done really well, that they hope that they could do more of in the future. What have they not done yet that they're really curious about, that may or may not be related directly to their job or work, but that helps build what we focus on grows. So positive and negative are there. Inspiration comes from that curiosity and that passion. And all of us have curiosity in us. It's just reawakening it. We don't know. I mean, in some ways, we have a little bit of a clean slate going on. Really have an opportunity to do things differently, even if it's just tiny little bit. So in some ways, it's a gift. What other questions?
Dr. Bena, if I can jump in, please. Sorry, I'm dying to ask these questions over the session. For me, I work a lot on social media, and it's those of us that work on social media during COVID has been quite a struggle. What is that one tip I can do to deal with negative people? So when you're trying to be positive and stay positive and maintain a positive mindset, and every time you say something, you are met with negativity, how do you deal with that? Like one tip or trick I can use day to day.
Yeah. So social media is tough. There's no way about, hands down, it's tough. It's not an engagement in this way. Yet, first thing is you have to accept what a person's telling you. So when I say positive, negative are there, never deny another person's experience. You really want to invite people to move along with you and say somebody is a negative, you have to acknowledge their negativity, not through judgment, but through their worldview. So storytelling. In conversations with one another, we have people that have different perspectives, and maybe they disagree with us, maybe we're getting frustrated, maybe we're getting angry. If you want to direct your world, your business, and your leadership and your people, you have to be willing to hear and accept. No. You have to be willing to hear. It doesn't mean you have to agree, but you do have to accept. Human dignity is about accepting other people's vantage points. You don't have to agree with them. But if you dismiss it right away, and just try and turn it to positive right away, you're gonna get the feedback, right back at you. So let people who are negative be negative. And then sometimes you don't have to engage things. You also need to be wise about what you actually respond to. Some commentary, and especially with social media, is not worth responding to. You have to make that call, right? But be willing to accept other people's points of view. How do you do that? Again, you got to come to the brain. Create a pause, however pause and what it looks like for you. What are the questions? And Chelsea, does that give you some?
Yes, thank you so much. That's made me feel a lot better.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Tanya has the same problem I have. Tanya, for the first time last night, I had 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. I feel much better for it, but I feel like you do. Switched on all the time, even behind closed eyes. The flicking continues. I try deep breathing twice a day, but then can't wait to finish the 3 minutes and to move on. I can't seem to switch off.
Okay. Yeah. So don't take 3 minutes. Take micro mini breaks. So because the pressure's on, and if you are not trained and practiced in breathing techniques and so on for years, you need to think of things as micro mini breaks. So do your 2 breathing breaks, but do it for 2 breaths. Don't create agitation in yourself. You want to recognize that right now you're in a space where it is extremely agitated. Don't fight yourself. Don't add that piece. You may still do it anyway, but recognize, wow, you're already doing breathing. Yes. Recognizing that. Do 2 breaths. Try and do it more frequently. When you remember, 2 more breaths. So whatever your technique is. So there's breathing. As an example, you can just simply, right now, you're not talking. As you inhale, there's a subtle coolness right where the nostril meets the upper lip. Can you feel that? And when you exhale, there's a subtle, subtle warmth. This is actually a yogic secret. It's a practice called Zazen. This is really powerful stuff. You don't have to believe me though. Just twice a day, or when you remember, just feel the temperature, coolness and warmth. It shifts from thinking mind to perceiving, but the mind's quick. Mind's so quick. 2 breaths. You're done. You've done a practice. How do you create pause?
Oh, I love that. I could have you on all day, Bena, but I'm not going to do that. I want to just thank you again for being so generous with your time and to remind us that we can take time and must take time to pause, even with all those demands around us. So I've learned a hell of a lot today, and we have recorded the session and we'll release it so that our colleagues in the tourism industry can listen to your great advice. And thank you again for agreeing to come on and help us, even though it was early in the morning for you and late in the afternoon for us. We hope that you get through this swimmingly, and hopefully we'll get to welcome you in South Africa when we're available to open our borders. We would love to see you in South Africa. So thank you again, Bena. And thank you to all of you guys who joined us today, and for your support. Keep strong. We'll get through this together. I know we will get through this together. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.